Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. Today, we're going to be installing the new roll cage into the Cayman. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. So, as you may have seen in one of my previous videos, and if you haven't, I'll give you a link right up here in this corner. I am increasing the crash safety and survivability of my 2012 Porsche Cayman in order to help my wife feel better about my new hobby of driving very, very fast on racetracks in the Cayman. I'm doing a variety of things, and the first step of that is to install this new half cage that I got from GMG Racing. Before we get into the installation, let me just make some comments about the roll cage itself. Overall, the cage seems to be well designed and well built. Overall, the fit up of the parts for the welding has been done very well, with the exception of one joint, which is this joint between the roll bar and the harness bar over on the other side. It's close, but it's not really all that good, and it is kind of obvious that it wasn't done quite right. Another big reason that I went with this particular roll cage was this rear brace is removable without removing the whole roll bar. It comes loose at those three joints and these two joints here at the strut tower supports. That way you can remove it and get access to the engine cover. However, one thing I've noticed is that these upper joints here don't match up real well. There's a lot of tugging and adjusting to get them to line up. So it's going to be kind of a pain getting it in and out. So I'm a little disappointed in that. That also gives me a little bit of cause for concern at how well these joints here for the strut tower mounts, how well they're done, how well they're machined to line up. I'm worried that when I get the mounts in place, that this is not going to line up real well, and I'm going to have a big fight with that. But we'll see during the actual installation. Overall, I'd give the construction design of the roll cage about a 7 or 8 out of 10. Overall, the aesthetic part of the design of the roll cages is quite nice. It's pleasing to the eye. It looks good in the car. However, I'm really pretty disappointed in the powder coating. Now, I paid extra to have the powder coating done in a custom color to, as close as possible, match the color of the Cayman. And for the most part, they did a really good job. However, and let's keep in mind, GMG Racing doesn't do their own powder coating. They send these out to some other shop to get it done. And whoever that shop is didn't do a very good job. The powder coating is not even, which causes it to be lighter in color in some spots. I mean, if you look here at this part of the bar, it's a pretty good match. I mean, I'm pretty happy. I'm perfectly happy with this part, and I'm not sure if it's coming across on camera, but down here it starts getting thinner and lighter. And so now there's a pretty bad color mismatch here at this joint between the back part and the actual roll bar. Another problem is at this joint here, the powder coaters didn't trim the tape correctly, the masking tape, to protect the machined joints. And so part of the bar doesn't have any powder coating on it at all. They also didn't plug the threaded holes, so the threads were all gunked up with powder coating, which meant the bolts wouldn't go in, and I had to clean them out using a tap. Now, it wasn't that big a deal. It took me about 10 minutes to do all the holes, but it's just the idea that if they had just done their job correctly, I wouldn't have had to go through all that. I think the most disappointing part about the powder coating issues is GMG Racing's response to the powder coating issues, which was no response at all. They were real responsive and happy to answer any questions when I was thinking about buying the roll cage. But once I bought it and I had it and there was an issue, they have gone radio silent and just no response at all to multiple emails. So even though the bar is so far satisfactory, seems to be well designed, and just the powder coating aesthetic issue, the fact that they are not standing behind the product, I can't recommend you buy this particular roll cage, because if you have a more serious problem like a bad weld or something, apparently they're going to, well, I can't say that they will ignore you too, but based on the fact that they're ignoring me, doesn't hold out a whole lot of hope that they won't ignore other problems. Yeah, as I mentioned, the way that the rear part of the cage attaches to the car is that it attaches on top of the strut towers on each side of the car, which gives you the added benefit of stiffening the rear section of the car and improving the handling. But in order to do that, you're going to have to remove the strut tower covers, which is kind of a major pain in the butt. Rather than including that process in this video, I did a separate video just on how to remove the strut tower covers, and I'll put a link to it right up there in that corner. Now, if you're wondering, the roll cage weighs a little under 42 pounds. And that's not bad, I suppose. The problem is that this is high weight, and it's above the center line of the body, so it contributes to body roll. Now, there's not a whole lot you can do about it because strong steel just weighs that much. Your only real alternative would be to go with a titanium roll cage, but now you're talking some serious money and you're way out of my budget. Okay, I think we got all the preliminaries out of the way. I'm going to disassemble the roll cage and get ready to install it into the car. There are 3 13mm nuts that need to be removed in order to put the shock tower mount on. At least I presume that's right, because there are 0 instructions on how to do any of this that comes with the roll cage. Go kind of slow, make sure I don't drop the nut. And now let's fit this on here. Make sure you don't pinch the PASM wire if your car has PASM. The fit is not real great. The bolts do not center up in the holes very well, so hopefully it's going to tighten down okay. Ooh, that was almost bad. I almost dropped the nut down into that hole. Holy moly, I'm just looking at this. This is going to be a pain to tighten. The way that this surrounds this nut. I'm not sure if it's coming through on the camera, but yeah, that's going to be potentially a screaming nightmare to get to. Hopefully one of my ratchet end wrenches will work. I'll tighten the other 2 down first and then attack that one. Nope. Oh, jeez. What a stupid... I can't get it on there at all. How in the heck am I supposed to tighten that nut? I mean, literally, you literally cannot get a wrench on that. I can't even get a socket on it. Wow, I do not have any kind of a flex head. Can't get in there. Man. All right, I'm gonna have to think about this. Okay, I was able to find a 1/4-inch drive socket and this little tiny breaker bar. that I managed to actually finagle in here. This is going to be tedious as all get out because I can only turn this about a quarter of a turn, and then I got to wiggle it loose and go back and reset it. I'll be back in a little while. That was not fun, but I got it on there. I'm going to go do the other one now. No point in videoing that.
Much later.
Well, that was like 3 or 4 of the most frustrating hours I've ever spent working on a car. So many issues with the way this thing goes together and fits. Let's start off by talking about the lower section here between the 2 strut towers. I started off, I mounted the strut tower pieces, and they went on very tightly. I mean, there are slotted holes here. I don't know why they're slotted, because this inner ring fits very tightly onto a lip that's around the strut itself. So it's locked in one position. So it can only go in one particular spot. I put both of them in, and when I put this back piece on, I found that they were about a quarter of an inch too far apart. So there was no way this was going to fit on there. The slotted holes are useless because the thing fits so tightly on that lip. So what I ended up having to do was taking my, and the slots don't even really line up with the motion that you need to get to make them slide back and forth. So what I did was I ended up putting the thing onto my milling machine and widening the slotted holes in the back so that I could get some movement. And then I had to grind off the lip here a little bit on each side so that I could shift each mount inward by about 1/8 of an inch. And that solved that problem. However, another issue crops up when trying to attach the top. Now, like I said, even out of the car, this was very hard to get to go together because these 3 bars all bow inward. They don't line up correctly. So in order to attach this onto it, you end up, or at least what I ended up doing, was attaching this one and then going over there and tugging and yanking and finally getting those parts popped into place. Let me tell you, trying to pull those bars over and line them up and get a screw into them from the bottom at the same time is a major feat of gymnastics, and I do not recommend it. But I got it figured out. I got it attached, and then I discovered that now when you attach this part, basically the top of the bar and the strut tower mounts are about 3/4 of an inch too far apart, so that you get this lined up and attached. Now there's no way you can yank and tug and pull the bottom bar down to line up with the holes in the strut tower mounts. Well, after a lot of finagling, playing with the slotted holes that are in the mounts on the bottom of the main roll bar, and just fiddling around and fighting with it, I finally ended up having to put washers under the front bolts of the mounts for the roll bar, which makes it tip back just a little bit and get these parts to line up. So, like I said, about 4 hours of fighting and finagling, and I finally got it put together. Now, what I'm worried about is when I do finally get it all settled and everything, is that it's going to be a nightmare taking this thing back out to get to the engine, because these machined joints, and probably rightly so, are extremely tight, very precise fit, which means if you get the least bit out of whack, they start to jam. And I'm afraid the ultimate answer is going to be anytime I need to remove this, I'm going to have to unbolt the bottom of the roll bar to give me some play to get this thing out of here. We'll see when that time comes. I may even do a test, probably going to do a test run of that here in a little while to see how difficult it's going to be to get this bar back out. what I'm doing right now is I've put the strut tower cover back on here, and I used a pencil sliding it around this bar here to get an idea of where it's lining up on the strut tower cover. So I'm going to try drilling a hole to allow the mount arm here to poke out through that hole so I can put these covers back on. Now, this is 1.5 inch tubing, I'm pretty sure, but I'm going to have to cut like a 2.5 inch hole in order to give myself enough room to finagle and wiggle it in there, because this doesn't just go straight in. It has to go straight in and lift it up and then drop down into some those triangular retaining clips go into some slots here. So I'm going to need a lot of wiggle room to take care of that. The problem is that once I drill the initial hole, it's pretty much, well, it's going to be extremely difficult to make the hole any larger. So I'm going to probably err far on the side of being too large of a hole than too small of a hole. I guess that's what I'm going to do next. I drilled a small pilot hole here as near as I could measure to the center of that partial scribed circle. And now I'm going to use the hole saw, and I used one that I could put a long bit in, so that, because I need a long lead so that I can get it on the hole without hitting down here first, because I'm going to be drilling at an angle. So I'm going to start this and then flatten it down, and using this top here to get myself level, I can try to go in as square as possible. This has the potential to be an utter freaking disaster. I haven't looked up how expensive these things are. Hopefully not too much. Old trick I forgot about. Run the saw backwards and just chew the plastic. Okay, that came out relatively decent looking. Yeah, it running a saw backwards like that, it actually kind of melts its way through. It's a very effective way to cut plastic. If you're cutting vinyl siding, that's how you do. You put the blade on backwards. So let me get a. Yeah, you can see where it didn't do a nice clean job down here where I was going forward first. So let me get a file and some sandpaper and see how much we can clean this up. Well, that came out looking surprisingly good. It's a little jagged there, but that's be kind of under the bar anyway. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, assuming that it actually fits, right? Okay, that's not perfection, but I think that came out pretty darn good. I need to find a way to maybe tuck that padding in a little bit. I could probably finagle some kind of a trim piece to snap in here. Doubt that's going to be real high on my priority list, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that came out. Now to do the other side. Now, if you're stripping out the interior of your car for the track, then this doesn't matter to you, but I'm leaving the interior trim in, at least for now. So I need to deal with this carpeting and such that's around where the roll cage mounts inside the cabin. And you can see it uses these two studs that are already in the Cayman. This floorboard and this bulkhead here, it's shared between the Cayman and the Boxster. And so these bolts are where the factory Boxster roll bar mounts, and GMG is just taking advantage of it and using it to mount their roll bar to it. Just as a side note, I asked GMG Racing where their roll cage mounted. They said, use these studs. I said, well, what's normally mounted to that? And they had no idea. So I did a little bit of research and found this is where the Boxster roll bar mounts. So GMG, if you're looking at this, there's the answer you couldn't give me. Okay, so the
this back here, you can see that the plate for the roll cage comes way further out than the body right here. And so one thing we're going to do is take and cut out this foam here to let it sit appropriately back in position. And then also we need to do something with the fact that this carpeting is right here. I've seen a lot of people simply take this and cut it right here and slice it off, or just cut it here and then kind of roll this under and leave it as a lump there so that they could put it back later. Neither of those looks particularly good to me. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and starting here where I think this roll bar center is going to be, I'm going to try cutting like a star pattern and then slicing it all the way open right here. Or actually, maybe I'll slice it open over here, because the part that the trim piece that fits over in this section kind of covers that edge. And basically, I'm going to try and tuck this back and take those star points and tuck them in so that they're out of the way. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. Then if nothing else, I'll just try taking and cutting those pie sections out and tucking around. I need to be careful though, because it's certainly easy to cut it too small and then make it bigger. Cutting it too big, it's kind of hard to make it smaller. So I think I'll start off by just going under here and cutting away this foam where that plate's going to be hitting it. I'm just kind of guessing. I put a nice sharp new blade in my X-Acto knife. That certainly makes life easier. It's flat out dangerous cutting with a dull blade because you're using so much more force. Okay, I think that's pretty close. Yeah, that's just about perfect where it's at. I think I'll actually, just to play it safe, cut a little more away. All right, now we'll also need to take and cut away the foam that's under here so that I can fold those edges under. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, so exactly how far this goes back. This used to tuck under here, but the roll bar is pushing this back some. So I'm going to take a guess that it's around here is the center. I'll come out to the side. And I realize you're not in the best angle there for the camera. A little bit more of that foam. Yeah, let's get rid of all this here. To come back a little further. All right, It's not a thing of beauty, but I think it actually works out pretty well. I'm gonna cut. Let's see if I can tuck this better. You can see how the roll bar is pushing this back, where this firewall cover is not coming forward like it really should. I might take this foam, see if we can stick it up in there, bump it back out. It's helping some, but not a whole lot. Hell, it is behind the seat after all. Okay. Honestly, not super thrilled with it. I think I might take and trim this away a bit. Try to be very careful not to run into the and scratch up the powder coat. Not bad. The last thing we need to do is put this corner trim piece back in place. And one thing I forgot to do was show you how to take it out. So once I get it back in, I'll show you how it comes out. It's really pretty simple. We need to start off, well, let me just show you here. A couple things that hold it in place on the bottom. One is this little, what do you call that? Stud, tab, whatever. It goes into a hole that's right down here next to the door, in the door sill, or the floor sill, whatever this piece was called. And the other thing is that this is a little like rubber grommet that goes onto the first one of the two threaded studs down here. So you got to make sure you get those onto those points, and then you're going to pull this thing up and put the top in. And it's just it's kind of a bit of a wrestling match more than anything, especially with the bar now in the way. This is much easier when you don't have a roll bar in there. And getting this little grommet thing lined up on there is also a bit tough. I'm reaching around behind here, guiding it onto that grommet, hopefully. All right. Oh yeah. Okay, there. The bottom is now in place, and we just kind of tuck this around underneath here. I'll do a better job of that in a minute. Now we pull ourselves a little bit of slack in the belt here, and then pull this piece straight up. Okay. Actually, now this looks like it's easier if you tuck this top piece in first and then guide it onto that bolt under there. Yep, it's just a question of wiggling stuff around until it goes into place. There. Then, there, you pull this up, there are two screws that go in. One's right here in the front, and the other one is tucked in back here where it's really kind of impossible to get to with the bar. So I'm probably not even going to bother with that one. Once you get those screws in, you push this piece back down into place. It kind of just sort of works its way into place, and you pull this rubber trim back around on top of it to get it lined up for that screw to go in. You need to go ahead and pull this rubber trim over on top of the carpeted piece. Just work your way along here, rolling it out and sliding the carpet underneath it. Now it's properly lined up. Or I can put the screw. Wow, I'm just tossing the screw all over the place. There. All right. Same thing with this. Wiggle it around and it snaps into place. Oh, okay. There's one of those little triangular spring clips that's gotten bent. There. Then this little cap piece sits on top. Get the little teeth in the front here lined up and push it straight down, and then again pull the rubber trim all the way around it. Whew! That was far more dramatic than I had planned on. Well, that turned out to be a whole lot more work than I had planned on. Partly because it was just such tight working quarters, but mainly because of the issues with the way the bar is made, just the quality of it. Now, the overall quality in terms of being a good roll bar in an accident, I think it's excellent. It seems to be very well made. It's heavy duty. It seems well designed. It's tied into the car very tightly. So on that score, I think it's good. Where it really fails is in the fitment issues, the way that the upper attachment points were all out of whack and didn't line up with each other. How I had to do all that grinding work, just as simple as this space from here to here. I mean, production variations in a car, I would expect that might vary by, a few thousandths, maybe a couple of hundredths of an inch, but I don't see how those upper towers, the tops of those strut towers, could be off by a quarter of an inch. So that just seems to be, well, I don't know exactly what it is, but it didn't fit, and I had to go through a whole lot of work to figure out how to make it fit and modify it to fit. So that wasn't too pleasing. The upper attachment points, the way they were all splayed and out of alignment, that's just poor manufacturing. I mean, I'm not an expert welder, but I am enough of a welder to know that, yes, you can have things warp and twist from the heat of the welding, but in a precision manufacturing facility, you account for those things and you adjust for them so that you end up, maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's out by, as much as a tenth of an inch. That would be okay. As you saw, these things were way more than a tenth of an inch. They were just unacceptably out of alignment. And I think initially I gave it like a 7 or 8 out of 10 in terms of manufacturing. And I'd have to knock that down to a 5 overall in terms of the quality of the way it's built. I'll give it 5 for the fact that it's well built and sturdy and fits well in terms of fitting into the car. Well, let me rephrase that. In terms of the way it attaches to the car firmly and seems safe. And then on the other half, in terms of proper alignment and fitment, it's just almost a total failure. So I think a 5 out of 10 is acceptable. Aesthetically, the powder coat finish was just, that's just a fiasco. I'm going to stick with my 2 out of 10 that I think I gave it. So overall, I'm going to have to say that this roll bar falls into the do not recommend category. There's got to be something better than this. And it just could be a case of, well, this cost me close to $3,000. I don't
think that that's a cheap roll bar. For cheap roll bars, you go to eBay, and don't go to eBay for a roll bar. I've seen a couple of them which scared me off even considering something coming off of eBay. The welds were terrible, and I wouldn't trust them whatsoever. So stick with a reputable company, hopefully US based, and get something that's very well made for something as important as a roll bar. Now, I realized I had said that I was going to show you how to remove those corner trim units once I got it installed, but I kind of forgot, and then I was like, I really don't want to go through all the hassle of pulling those things back out because they were such a pain to get back in. You start off by removing that upper cap piece that you saw me put on. Here's a little clip out of the other video I did on removing all the interior trim in this area that shows you how to remove that cap. Just get your fingers for one hand in where this the slot where the seatbelt comes out, and kind of hold the lower area. This seam here comes around the front, and just hold the lower part and pull up on that slot straight up, and it comes loose. And let it hang here off the seatbelt. You don't need to loosen or remove the seatbelt. Once you get that cap off, then you pry that upper piece off that's still left. You pry it, not off, you pry it up, and you get at those two screws that are under there, remove those, and then you pull that thing up, and you pull the top of the trim piece, the one you're removing, you pull it out straight towards the center of the car to pop loose those triangular retention clips. Once those come loose, you go straight up to get it off of that, that stud and the other little piece that goes down into that hole. Okay, now, before you go down there, find that thumbs up button, give me a like on this video, feed that YouTube algorithm, and let them know that you enjoyed this video. And if you're not one of my subscribers, go find that big red subscribe button, give that a click, and join the channel. Now, remember, a channel subscription doesn't cost you a thing. It's absolutely free, but it really helps me with growing the channel. And finally, if you want to keep up with everything that I'm doing here in the garage, including all the work that I'm doing on Project 987.2 and all the other things that I'm working with, go find that bell icon and give it a click. That turns on notifications for this channel, and that way YouTube will let you know every time that I do something new from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.